Okay, thank you very much. I'm probably coming at this from a slightly different perspective because I've had it for the last 10 and 15 years. My kind of main focus has been, especially with that kind of dreaded word, exams, namely things like IELTS exam prep, TOEFL exam prep. So it's kind of a little bit different, viewpoint. And what I'm going to talk about today is, a lot of the students, I'm here, as Wade has mentioned, I'm here teaching at Lakeland, and we've got the task, we've got to get the students up to TOEFL 500 to go onto the academic program, plus we have to also improve things like their critical thinking, their discussion skills. And what I'm going to talk about here is, especially with it's putting all of these things together. It's helping them to improve the vocabulary, but also critical thinking and discussion skills, and the kind of problems I've experienced with the students when you're actually in the classroom, getting them to use new vocabulary. So that's the kind of the background. I've kind of said 7 steps to vocabulary heaven. Hopefully, students enjoy it actually. I know we kind of talk. I've got a 14-year-old son who we've got this constant joke at home as how was school. Okay. Listening to Beatles songs and whatever. I said, get some decent music on. Well, not decent music, get some modern music on and stuff. So, what I'm basically going to talk about is, why this kind of more contextualized approach is useful. Look at how the vocabulary is presented in textbooks, the kind of problems that actually causes students, and just look at kind of stages which I've developed, from which I found more effective for helping the students to learn to use vocabulary, plus flexibly, and then look at some of the benefits of the approach. So. The approach is useful. A lot of the Japanese students find it difficult to be able to learn and to actually correctly use new vocabulary. And the textbooks, unfortunately, don't always help with that. We've got kind of very generic textbooks, and Japanese students find it very hard to make that connection and then to be able to take the new vocabulary and run with it. So, just as an example, one of the textbooks I use frequently has this kind of instruction. The following words and the phrases appear in the readings in chapter 2. They all come from the academic word list. Complete the sentences. Students can get the dictionaries out and complete the sentences, but then when you try to take it to the next stage and to actually be able to use that, it doesn't really lend itself to a lot of communication. The government recently imposed a crackdown on smoking in restaurants. If I say, the government recently imposed a crackdown on restaurants, it's like, oh yeah, interesting. Nice weather outside, isn't it? Yeah, it kind of comes crashing to a halt. If you then say to the students, okay, make your own sentences, frequently the students can't. It's like the rabbit in front of the headlights, and you can kind of see the block. You can see, actually to transfer that. And sometimes myself, I do a lot of materials development, and I kind of get the vocabulary and think, how the hell can I use this? Okay, and if I'm having a difficulty putting a sentence down, then I can understand the students are having a hell of a lot more difficulty than I'm having. So I kind of go through various stages with vocabulary. First of all, just making sure that the students actually understand the meaning of the vocabulary. There can be vocabulary that seems very simple. I had an issue recently with the word central. Central, students actually, even with a good example sentence, been able to take that and use it and write. So, this also involves reading skills, going to find vocabulary in text, underline it, check that they understand the meaning. So it's all kind of students-led. It's getting the dictionary out of the classroom, so they're not, you're kind of giving them the kind of the scaffolding to help them a little bit. So just getting them to understand the meaning, but then I spent a little bit of time, I just produced simple worksheets, just changing these sentences, something which has a bit more meaning for the students. In this case here, I've chosen to put things down as opinions. You know, in my opinion, the Japanese government should impose a ban on smoking in restaurants. So there's kind of something which is stronger. There's a, you know, you can, students can connect with that. So that's kind of the next stage which I use with that. It's still a gap fill activity, but it's not just an empty gap fill activity, there's a purpose to it. That's going to lend itself to the next stage where we've got the statements and the students can then go discuss these together. The effect of that, maybe you've got 10 sentences. The effect is you've got the vocabulary pinging about the classroom. It's still flipped over to the students who might have 10 statements, but the students can just pick and choose which ones they talk about. But as I said, you've got that kind of vocabulary, the repetition of the vocabulary you guys were talking about for the extensive reading. You've got the vocabulary pinging about the classroom. The students love this kind of thing. I've usually got to kind of get the students to, we're teaching here at Lakeland, we've got these dividers, okay? I've got a guy trying to teach a class quietly next door to me, and my students are up in kind of massive discussion with this. So the students kind of really love this, the chance to actually, you know, speak, give their opinions, agree, disagree on topics. I put the extra little bit of challenge in there, which is, you know, use the words when you're speaking. I do this because my experience, I've done lots of speaking, and you get to the end of an activity and like, well, which words did you use? And they're kind of, none of them. Okay. So just putting that extra focus, and even just highlighting words and things. So there's an extra motivation for the students to use the vocabulary. But what I also really like, and I think is an important stage, is, you know, some kind of language analysis substitution. So it's not just my language, it's getting stuff over to the students. And also just trying to show the students how easy it can be to take new vocabulary and to be able to use it. So, I mean, if I just go back, if we start off with things like crack down on car drivers who use smartphones, crack down on pedestrians who use smartphones when they're crossing the road. But the ideas are coming from the students. That's beautiful. I love that, because as a teacher, I'm in there with the students. There's lots of incidental vocabulary coming about. Students have a lot of problems with, you know, things like prepositions or natural collocation. So doing all of this, suddenly all of these things kind of pop up, and, you know, you're actually in there. At the end of the lesson, there's a tangible result at the end of the lesson. The students they've learned something new. So, and their ideas are really interesting, okay? Actually, I was just amending this at lunchtime, and I was bouncing off Anna. My mind went blank. I was thinking, crackdown or what? I couldn't think of anything. I was only teaching this 2 weeks ago, and I forgot what my students are saying. So it was brilliant. The students come up with some really interesting ideas. It's quite fun when they do it. Sometimes you just got to help them a little bit, maybe it's points of vocabulary, points of grammar. But you kind of end up with, you know, maybe say to the students, you know, choose 5 different words, put them down. So it kind of flips on to the next thing where you're practicing. They've done one practice with the vocabulary, it's been pinging about the classroom. We then move on, the students are they're internalising the language. And the vocabulary is you can hear it going around the classroom again. We've got some new ideas to talk about in the class. And very very creative as well. You're getting that kind of creative. We're talking about the reading and the stories, but getting a creative element into the classroom. We've got GR should impose a ban on passengers drinking alcohol on trains. What do you reckon, Wade?
Case by case.
You've been in Japan too long. What? You're going to take away my fun, my road beer going home at night?
Yeah, road beer.
But case by case, only on the special card, you're not on the regular.
Case.
Nice one, yeah. But I mean, in addition to that, we've mentioned things like Nation about kind of getting the repetition into the classroom. Things like, I like to do also things like consolidation as well. So, connecting this with homework, writing a short paragraph, choosing one of the opinions, just getting them to write a short paragraph, using the new words, underlining the words when they're using them. Again, I mean, for homework, again, not keeping this as an empty task, just a piece of homework to be given to the teacher. We've got, I think I've got about, we're lucky here actually. I know the Japanese universities have much bigger classes. We're still quite lucky here, but we've still got about 60 students. I don't collect in homework from the students. This kind of thing is the students' work in the classroom. So, they get a chance to, they get a chance to write more and explain their ideas more. Students seem to love doing that. Comes into the classroom maybe the next day, and therefore you're getting it's continuing on. You're getting more repetition, more discussion the next day using the vocabulary. So for me, that's kind of another kind of very important part of the process. We mentioned before the dirty word assessments and testing. I hate I mean, I spent so many years working with IELTS and with TOEFL. And I kind of hate testing. I feel sorry, I go home and I see my kids. I see what my kids are going through. My son's doing the ACAN test, and he's sitting, learning all this kind of pointless vocabulary which he can't use and stuff. But what I also started to do with tests is I also started to rather than just simply using things like gap fills for tests, is giving the students, if they're doing 10 words a week, having a test at the end of the week, but actually testing them on using the vocabulary as well. So it actually brings the assessment, rather than just testing them on the knowledge. It's the assessment is part of the development process as well. So and again, I mean, with 60 students, it can be very hard. That you give the students the exam questions, thinking, yeah, this is great for their development, which is brilliant until you've got 60 questions to read through and to check. And I actually feel quite guilty because the students get really into this, and it's really powerful because you really get to know the kind of students, the depth of their thinking. Some of the students that are writing, it's kind of, what can I say? And kind of, you've got 60 to go through, so you're kind of quickly going through grading and stuff. I'd love to be able to comment and take it up more with them, but I can't because I've got I want to get to bed at some point. I want to drink beer. Not on the train though.
Not in that order.
So even for things like assessment, I started to incorporate this more into assessment, and giving the students credit for being able to use the vocabulary, giving them a little bit of credit as well if they can kind of show deeper thoughts into this, discussing maybe both sides of an argument. So again, that's something which I found useful, and it just gets that kind of more repetition of the vocabulary. It's more active. That kind of active, the active points, I can't remember the research it came from, but I was helping an Iranian student. She contacted me on LinkedIn, and I was helping her do her PhD. And one key point which she found on her PhD was that your active focus on vocabulary, active study and use of vocabulary was more effective than incidental. So sometimes if we're using maybe a news article with students and you're just getting them to pick out some vocabulary from the news article that they learned, I think the research was said if you give the students that kind of very clear focus, it's more effective for helping them to be able to learn to remember to use the new vocabulary. So that is something else which I always keep in mind as well. So kind of takes me on to your thinking of benefits of the approach, and I've kind of summarised them down into what I think are 4 key benefits. Obviously, opportunities to learn and practice new access clear, meaningful context, the repeated exposure to the vocabulary, but also I think very important is all of the other academic skills which are included in here as well. Reading, finding the vocabulary in a text, so things like scanning skills and academic, getting into discussion, lots of discussion skills that can be included as well. And I think actually in the creative part of this is the students at the moment of need and personalised, is when the students are using the language, when they're writing, helping them. So I personally like to be very much I've got maximum 19 students in a class, so there's a good opportunity to have interaction with the students, and I like to be in there with helping them, giving them some practical help. So so in summary, I spend a lot of time doing in the class. I think the classes are very enjoyable. Students really enjoy the classes and what they're doing. They're on task, they're using the vocabulary, there's lots of discussion. I do use music. I end up with students singing songs or humming along with the songs and stuff. So I think it's a beneficial approach to take. Thank you for listening. Any questions? Yes, Anna.
When they bring in their paragraphs that they've done for homework,
Yeah?
do they do anything with it?
Yeah.
What do they do?
They sit down, they swap.
Swap.
They sit down, they swap with a partner. Try maybe to make sure they're sitting with a different partner from the previous day. They swap with a partner. They ask each other some questions. They have a further discussion about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
What's the so what is the source for the different vocabulary? Where is it coming from?
I will always.
Maybe you said that, I missed it.
No, I didn't. I missed it. Thanks for pointing out. Before I do any of the vocabulary, this will usually stem from some reading. So they will have done some reading skills practice or some listening, and they will have an audio script. This will be post reading, post listening activity.
Extracted from whatever stories or content you're using in class, basically?
Yes, yes, yeah. And if possible, authentic. Authentic.
I heard the word stories. Was that a plug for your website?
No.
I was just going to say, what you're doing with vocabulary, you could definitely do with extensive reading. Just pulling the words out of the stories.
Yeah. I have to be honest, I haven't really used extensive reading.
I mean, that's already given me ideas, because you could have the students pull vocabulary out and make new stories with them.
Yeah. So then they're kind of writing the stories and putting these words into the stories. So yeah,
Are you familiar with Range program?
I'm not.
It's free download from Wellington Poll Nation, and it's British National Corpus. So all the words that you use in your class, you could input them into that database, and they could tell you which level of words you're using, the first 1,000, second 1,000, third 1,000. It's freeware. Go to University of Wellington Poll Nation,
Right.
and they developed it. It might be a useful tool for you, so that you can benchmark your vocabulary to the level of your students.
Actually, that would be really.
Rangefinder?
Range.
Range.
University of
Yeah.
Wellington website.
It's
Kind
just
of
called
a
Range.
nerdy program, though, so
Yeah.
you need to be a little bit of a computer. I couldn't figure it out.
Really? Oh, yeah.
No, but there's another one it's based on Range, the Lex Tutors.
Yes, the Lex Tutor
I
as
use
well.
that.
LexTutor.ca has the profiling software, pretty much like Range
Yeah,
does.
it's helped collocations as well, right?
Yeah.
Lex Tutor.
I don't know, maybe we can talk about you teach them how to use. Figure it out, but Range is good.
All you have to do is save it to a data file. Yeah, otherwise it just wipes it out.
No,
So I had the same problem.
that would actually be really useful, because some of the textbooks we use here, the reading textbooks, are not actually pitched by CEFR level.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of faced with the problem of, for the students, they're thinking, well, what level is this?
The only problem with that, if you have the digitized version of the textbook, it's either flip it into Range or the Lex Tutor, but otherwise you'll have someone either OCR it in
Yeah.
or type it up.
Which causes error, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
But
there's
you need
no,
a digital version.
there's no collocations in Range. It's individual words.
Okay.
So Lex Tutor.
Good point.
Lex Tutor's good,
Yeah, this actually came from an old BBC News article, which was about smoking, the whole thing about the Olympic Games coming, and this kind of move to get smoking banned in restaurants and things. So it was all kind of very interesting.
Here,
Yeah. So all it was just from that, and it's like, well, I want to kind of develop some vocabulary from that. I don't just want to do the reading stuff. So I was kind of just pulling out. I was just pulling out vocabulary, and especially you mentioned collocations, especially collocations. So it's not just. I was highlighting some things. I was highlighting on there, things like not impose a ban on something, because again, that's kind of part of my approach, which is not taking the students away from grammar and learning phrases, just learning it in situ, and then hopefully that's making it easier and more fun for the students. So, yeah.
Okay, 60 students in a class.
No, I've got total. We teach
Okay.
at Lakeland. We've got three classes a day. So
Right.
listening, speaking, reading, writing. That's a total of 16 students. But we've got a massive emphasis on testing here. So the kind of workload is a lot of testing, writing tests, marking tests, lots. This is the testing period.
Okay.